Hey there guys, got a question regarding soft lockout on bench press, as well as soft lockout when the weight gets heavy, and why people see it happen a lot with heavy bench presses. So for me, soft lockout occurs typically when I'm doing my rep work. Competition, it's a little bit different. Simply put, when you're doing multiple reps, I don't completely lock out, because when I force the lockout under a heavier load, I have to let go of some of the tension in my scapula. Like, I retract my scapula, but in order to fully extend my arm, I have to let my shoulder drift forward. So I slightly round my shoulders forward at the top of the rep. This would then put me in a really poor pressing position for the next reps. And when you retract your shoulders, retract your scapula, you elevate your chest, and having that elevation in the chest, having that stable base then to push off, helps protect the shoulders just when you're training. So if I was to sort of completely lock out and round forward, I just open myself up to the possibility of injury through repetitive movements. Another thing, when the weight gets really heavy, you sort of find that your elbows sort of slightly unlock naturally anyway. So when you're pressing and locking out the weight, you're never really trying to force a hard extension of the arm, just because you save your joints in some regard. A lot of the time it just happens naturally. There's a big difference between people having a soft lockout versus you see some people and they quite literally do half reps. Doing half reps, yeah, it's not really a goal of mine. But as the weight gets heavier, and same when I'm coaching other strong individuals, if they have a slightly soft lockout for their rep work, I'm not really phased about it at all. Because coming into the last 3 to 4 weeks of, say, a competition block, you typically work up to some, heavier singles, things like that, getting used to the weight for competition. And you'll quite often find if you're only doing one rep, you completely lock out and it's not a problem. And then, you've got the calls as well, like the start command, the press command, and the rack command. So, you're trying to mimic competition in that regard. But, yeah, in terms of soft lockouts, I am actually in favour of them, but not to a ridiculous extent where, it may look like, a half rep or a 3/4 rep. For me, I just try and leave probably 2 to 3 centimeters at the top of the movement unlocked. And the other point of view and thing to consider is if you hold a weight over your chest, you've just got your elbows locked and the rest of it, or just doing static holds in general, it's sort of accepted that you strengthen 15 degrees either side of the angle that you're working. So I'm not really, fussed about that last 2 to 3 centimeters, because in terms of angle position and, range of motion, I'm not really missing much, and the degrees within that, it's only 3 or 4 degrees as well, so I'm not phased about that. I'd rather have a soft lockout and then hold it for an extra 1 or 2 count, and then rack the weight. So that's another thing you can consider. These problems you'll also find you're not really going to start to incur until you really start hitting that 3 plate a side and above. For most individuals, your regular gym training person, they're not going to run across it. You're just going to see it more in your heavier benches, guys that have been training for a lot longer. You'll also see, quite a lot of bodybuilders as well. They purposely won't lock out. They'll have a softer lockout than what I'd want to have in my training, but their goals are different. Again, they're just trying to hold the tension on the muscle, and for them, they're trying to they're using the weight as a tool. They're not really using the weight to necessarily get stronger. They're just after muscle growth. So how they train and how they lock out and other things, it's completely different. And grip width makes a big difference as well. If you have a very narrow grip, it's a lot easier to lock the weight out, and your soft lockout won't look anywhere near as bad. But if you take a really wide grip, you're going to find there's a lot more stress on the shoulder if you're not used to it, and your soft lockout is going to look a lot worse because it's going to be exaggerated a lot. So it really does come down to the individual, what they're training for, how long they've been training, the load that they're using as well, and yeah, obviously the weight. If you guys have any other questions, comment below. Otherwise, have a great day wherever you are.